Hi, this is Christina with my White Mountain Endurance, and I want to talk today about the magic in the mountains and all the cool stuff that happens. And I really want to start by saying a quote that I really love from a movie that I think is an awesome movie, Into the Wild. If you haven't seen it, definitely worth seeing. But it says, happiness is only real when shared. And every time I'm out in the mountains, I prefer to be out there with friends, with other people, because when you share that journey with other people, I find that when you share that happiness with others, you're creating a memory, you're creating an experience. You really get to know each other on an extremely intimate level. And the longer and further that you go into your journey, the more you really get to know one another. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about disappearing into the mountains with a friend for a long day, is the experience that you share together. And it's not just the experience of physically being out on the trail and challenging yourselves, helping each other work through low points, high points, and everything in between, but it's the adventure that you'll carry with you into your everyday life. So, going to be kind of like just rambling on about a different dynamics and how these long adventures work. A friend of mine, actually somebody I just met about a week and a half ago, her and I headed out on a cool 30-mile adventure yesterday, and we had some really in-depth conversations on this topic, and some pretty cool stuff came out of it. And we got to chatting about, do you like doing things solo? Do you like doing things with other people? And there's something cool about going out there by yourself and doing something. But then there's also something really magical when you go out with other people and you have intentions of staying together and working together through the experience. And some of the mountain days can be really hard, and you can have days where you may not be feeling great, but if you have somebody there to keep you company and lift you up, you'll tend to have a much better experience. We had a pretty cool conversation as well about kind of like our primal instincts, and Veronica had brought that up, and it really kind of struck a note with me. And if you think back to who and what we have always been, we were hunters, we were gatherers, we very social creatures. We worked together for a common goal. And I think that, society has taken some of our primal instincts away. It's made life easier for us. It's given us the opportunity to no longer go out and have to fight for a partner, fight for food. We have these civil rules that we've created in society, which aren't a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's also the primal instinct within all of us, and that instinct can be anything from competition to sex drive to wanting to be with other people to wanting to be alone, our need for survival, and ultimately our need for adventure. And we have always been adventurous beings, from our primal days to many years ago when adventurers were going out and literally writing maps as they went. And these people weren't doing this stuff alone. They were out there together with a common goal. And I'm obsessed with reading books about mountaineering. Unfortunately, I think I've read every single one, so I don't really have a lot more to read unless I revisit the books. But I find that ultradistance running, and especially when you start doing the mountain style ultradistance running, brings you to that place of adventure again. You have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you'll be a burden for the other people that you're out there with. You have to watch the weather. You have to pay attention to your body. You have to eat properly, hydrate properly. You're, constantly analyzing your route, where you're at, where you're going, where you want to be. You're looking at the time, watching the sunrise, watching it set, being aware of your surroundings, looking for, little signs. Is there an animal I need to worry about? Are these clouds scary? How am I feeling? Is it hot? Is it cold? So these things that come to us on these super long adventures bring something into our life that I really feel that we were designed to have. And there aren't very many places in this life where we can escape having cell service, where we can immerse ourselves in nature for several hours, like 10, 20, 30, 40 hours, and disappear from the comforts that we have of society. And to travel with a couple other people with fairly minimal gear. I mean, you should be carrying enough to take care of yourself if the weather turns for the worse, or if you have to spend a night in the woods. Accidents do happen, so you are carrying gear, but it's not like you're in a house where you can go in and take care of whatever problem you have relatively easily, even if it means calling 911, which on the trail, calling 911 may be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours before somebody gets to you. So you have to be very aware of where you are. And this brings us back to mindfulness. You know, the longer and more in depth your adventure is, the more mindful we become. Because we're melting away and we're becoming one with nature. And we're paying attention to the ground, the trees, the weather, the temperature, what our personal needs are. And this also shifts with the conversations that we have with the people that we're sharing this time on the trail with. And spending time on the trail with a complete stranger is sometimes taking a chance because you don't know how that's going to go. And sometimes it can be completely amazing. You know, yesterday was awesome. We had a lot of really cool conversations, and there have been times that I've been out on the trail for very long days where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for this to be over. So picking your partners appropriately when you do adventure into these long distance things will certainly make a difference in how that day goes. And I find that the further you go in that adventure, the harder it becomes, the more physically challenging it becomes. You all ultimately reach this point where you go from struggle to just peace and camaraderie. And you have these conversations that you may never otherwise have because you've been taken down emotionally and physically to this place within yourself that I personally have never been able to find unless I've been out in the mountains for a long time and pushing myself and, you know, really moving further away from our simple day-to-day lives to survival. And, you know, if you're out there for 12 hours, that's one type of survival. Sometimes you're out there for a week, totally other type of survival. And, you know, if you throw camping and things like that into the equation, it definitely changes the whole dynamic. So there is a lot of magic to be had when you go out on the long days in the mountains. And, you know, if you've never done one, you may want to give it a try. You might find that you really enjoy it. If you tend to do things solo all the time, maybe reach out and join a group and see what it feels like to share an adventure on the trail with somebody. I've always joked around and said that I feel like all of life's problems and the world's problems could be solved by disappearing into the woods and on a trail for hours, because the further you get into your day, into your adventure, the further you get into conversation, and the more you really start to look at life and yourself for exactly who and what you are, exactly who and what life is, instead of all the things that you think you want and all the things that you think you need. You really become closer to really the essence of who you are. And I think that's my favorite part about spending time with other people in the woods for an extended period of time, is really getting past that barrier and getting to know each other on an extremely personal and intimate level. And the conversations that come up they're therapeutic, they're healing, they're intelligent, they're interesting, they're funny. You go through so many different emotions, and you know, there is a level of intimacy on the trail with your friends because, you know, you're hungry, you're struggling, you're going to the bathroom, you know, you're joking about everything, you're getting chafing in weird places. Your conversations become conversations you would never have in the normal world. And I think it's kind of fun to basically remove all those layers that we've been given in society and just be our true selves and who we are, and to feel wild and feel primal again, and really just tap into those instincts that we've been told we need to suppress, or that we have to suppress in certain situations in society, because we can't always act on exactly how we feel. There is, respect, courtesy, just common decency towards one another. But when you're in the woods, you can be silly. You can goof around about topics you wouldn't normally goof around about. You get pretty silly and playful in the woods. And there's also the group dynamic of helping one another out. If somebody gets injured, if somebody's struggling, if you need to adjust your pace, I think that's a huge lesson to be learned too, because it teaches you patience. It teaches you how to be a better person, how to work together as a group and as a team. And when you come back to civilization and normal life, and you're thrown into these scenarios, whether it's in family situations, work situations, or other more civilized situations, you have learned those basic tools to work with other people in a really polite and kind and caring way. So spending all that time in the woods for many hours with another person gives you a lot of tools that you will take back when you return to civilization. And that adjustment and the change between the two can be pretty challenging. One of my clients that I coach had a very interesting question that she had asked me after she started experiencing the mountains. And she said, how do I deal with returning to my normal life after having had such an amazing experience? And I think any of us that have spent enough time in the mountains remember our first few times. You get up there and it's like, holy cow, I just did this. And physically, emotionally, you're just like, you're so pumped. And if you have other people there, you've just created this incredible experience with other people. And there's bonding and excitement and this intimacy that you can't achieve any other way in your life. And you're sharing this with other humans. And then you come back to society and you come back to the real world, and you have struggles, and you have people competing with one another, and people not being nice to one another, and they don't want to help each other out, and you just want to run back into the mountains. So it was a pretty difficult question for me to answer, because I struggle with the same thing too. You have these amazing experiences, and then you have to come back to a civilized world where unfortunately not everybody's civilized, and sometimes we don't like our jobs, or we don't like where we are in our personal lives, and we want to change that. And disappearing into the mountains with other people gives us the tools to behave any way we choose to behave when we come back to civilization. And there's another quote by Renee Damal. You can Google it. I can't say it exactly word for word, but it starts, you cannot stay on the summit forever. You have to come down sometime. And it goes on to say, and why climb? And the why climb is because when you ascend, you get to see. And when you descend, you no longer see, but you have seen. And your experiences out there give you the tools that you need to conduct yourself much better when you come back to the civilized world. You'll find that you can handle stress better. You'll find that you can have very calm conversations with other people. You'll find solutions to challenges that you have in your life that some of them you may not have realized you had until you got out on the trail and started talking with other people. And I feel like you start getting like 5-6 hours into your day in the woods, and all of a sudden you start talking to each other about your struggles. You're not just the struggles you're having on the trail, if you're having any, but struggles in personal life. And it's this beautiful form of therapy where you're out in nature, you're talking with another human being, and oftentimes you'll find that they may have similar struggles or other struggles, and you can work together to share tools and advice on how you return to civilization. and how you manage your life when you get back home, which isn't always easy. And for some people, it's an eye-opener that maybe the life you're living isn't the life that you really want to have. And I think that's a really hard thing to accept, and I see that oftentimes when people start, experiencing these long ultra-distance days and having more fun with other people, and realizing that maybe they're not psyched on the life that they have, but they feel stuck. And that can create a lot of tension as well with personal relationships. It can create tension with your workplace, because now you feel like you're living two different lives. So how in the world do you create a life where you are living your life when you're out there on your adventure, and you're living your life when you come back to civilization? And that takes sitting with your emotions and taking every single emotion into consideration, feeling it, and kind of putting it into pieces where you can make sense out of why you feel that way, and being honest with yourself. Are you truly happy? Are you happy with your job? Are you happy with your partner? Are you happy with yourself? Are you happy with where you live and what you're doing? And if you're not, it is okay to make changes. And you shouldn't deny yourself those feelings that you have, and you should definitely not rush into anything, but you should take time to explore, is your life the best life that you can possibly be living? And the mountains have given me such a beautiful gift, where after I've found self-love and self-worth, I was able to start sitting with my emotions, picking them apart, and realizing that maybe I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live. I wasn't able to be my true self, and I had to make changes. And those changes do not happen overnight. They take a very long time, and they take patience and persistence. But you can change, and you can slowly figure out what makes you really happy. Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be with? Who do you want to spend your time with? And part of that is selfish. But it doesn't have to be like terrible selfish. If you're not happy, you can't possibly make somebody else happy, and you can't be good for anybody else in your life. So you need to focus on what's going to make you happy. And sometimes that involves sacrifices that are very difficult choices to make and things to sacrifice. Change is always terrifying and scary, and change shouldn't happen overnight unless it's the type of situation where you are physically or emotionally in danger and have to get out. And that's a totally different topic. If you're ever scared or don't feel safe where you're at, there are a million resources. You can get out. Trust me, I know. Get yourself out. But if it's just like you're just stagnant, or you realize that you're not living the life you want to have, there's nothing wrong with figuring out where you want to be. And the best place to figure all that stuff out is out in an adventure, and an adventure with friends. And if you're out there with your friends and they're asking for advice, I think one of the best things you can do for each other is maybe not give advice, and just talk. Talk about, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with. Nobody else should make decisions for you, because you have to make decisions for yourself that make sense exactly where you're at. And you really shouldn't make changes until you're ready. And we all work at different paces. So being supportive of one another and having these deep conversations on the trail isn't necessarily saying, oh my God, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's, oh gosh, well, maybe, I had these struggles and this is how I dealt with it. And it may not be what works for you, but I was able to find a solution, and going back and forth together on possibly figuring out a solution that works for each of you. So there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of magic. The longer you're out there, the more real you become, because your body starts to hurt. You start to wonder if you can do it. And those are the moments that I live for. The moments where you're out there and everything's starting to come undone, and you're spending time with these people that are awesome, and they say, you've got this, and maybe they're not feeling great either, but you're working together as a team. And as a team, you're working together to solve problems, to take care of yourself, to take care of each other, to be mindful of where you're at. You know, you're looking around at beautiful things. Yesterday, it was really cool. It was 1,000,000 degrees. We had to slow our pace and adjust our route so that we had opportunities to filter water before we went up climbs instead of when we got to the, just to make sure we had enough water to drink, and having conversations the whole time about how are you feeling? Do we need to slow down? Can we move faster? Should we run here? Should we walk here? And it just teaches you a lot about teamwork, compassion, patience, understanding that you're going to feel good for a certain period of time, and then you're not going to feel great. And the other person hopefully is feeling better when you're feeling down, so that they can guide you back to a really good spot. And, the distractions we saw on the trail, I mean, we were looking at how the forest changed. Look at the chipmunks, look at the moss, look at the ferns, look at the trees, look at how everything changes. And look at the sky, look at the weather, make decisions together. So a lot of the lessons that we learn when we're out in the woods are huge lessons that we can bring back to our regular life. And they can teach us how to have calm adult conversations. They can teach us that we can have the life we want if we put work, effort, and time into it. And, being able to have a calm, peaceful conversation with another human being is amazing. And that's what happens on the trail. For the most part, people aren't screaming and fighting on the trail. They're having cool conversations. They're problem solving. So take those tools with you when you come back and use those on yourself. Use those in your personal life. And if you're struggling, I suggest self-love. Work on that first. Once you have that self-love and totally doable, you can start working on how do you change your life? How do you get what you want out of your life? And how do you live your best life? Because it is not worth suffering. It is not worth not being happy. We only get to do this life once. Don't screw it up. Don't waste it. Enjoy your life. Be happy. And I promise you, once you find happiness within yourself, even if it means you have to change the people that you hang around with, or your relationship, or your work, any of that stuff, you will find that others will be happier too. Because if you can't present your best self around a situation that you're in, it's not good for anybody around you, and they're not going to be happy either. So basically, you're taking away from other people's happiness as well. So self-love, figure out if you're exactly where you want to be. If not, adult conversations, keep them calm. Fighting, there's no reason for fighting, yelling, and screaming. Anything can be solved with a simple conversation. If it can't, go for a long walk in the woods. It does wonders. And if you go out there with friends or somebody you love or care about, you're going to create an incredible memory with another human being. And it brings us full circle back to that quote: happiness is only real when shared with others. If you need any help at all with coaching, I do life coaching along with my coaching for whatever sport you choose to do. I would love to help you. I've got a lot of experience, and if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. You can send me an email, Christina@whitemountainendurance.com, and go have some fun today.